What if some of the world's most remarkable African artworks were not simply discovered in museums, but taken from a kingdom after it was invaded and destroyed? In 1897, British forces entered Benin City, the capital of one of West Africa's most powerful kingdoms. What followed would change the history of the Kingdom of Benin forever. Thousands of artworks disappeared from the royal palace. Today, many of those objects are displayed thousands of miles away from where they were created. But how do they get there? And why are countries and museums still arguing over their return more than a century later? This is the story of the Benin Bronzes. Long before modern Nigeria existed, the Kingdom of Benin had already developed into a powerful and sophisticated state. Its capital, Benin City, stood in what is now southern Nigeria. At the center of the kingdom was the Oba, the king of Benin. The Oba was not simply a political ruler. He was the spiritual and cultural center of the kingdom, and the royal palace was filled with objects that recorded the history and achievements of the dynasty. Benin's craftsmen became famous for their extraordinary metalwork. Among their greatest achievements were cast brass and bronze plaques, sculptures, commemorative heads, figures, and ceremonial objects. Many were created using the lost wax casting technique, a highly skilled process in which an artist first created a wax model, covered it with clay, heated it so the wax melted away, and then poured molten metal into the resulting mold. The result could be remarkably detailed. Some plaques portrayed kings, warriors, court officials, and important historical events. They weren't simply decorations. They were part of Benin's historical record. By the late 19th century, European powers were competing aggressively for territory and influence in Africa. Britain was expanding its presence in West Africa. British merchants were particularly interested in trade, including palm oil and other resources. Benin, meanwhile, maintained control over its own territory and trade networks. Relations between Benin and Britain became increasingly tense. There were disagreements over trade and political influence. British officials wanted greater access to the region. The Oba and his government wanted to protect the kingdom's independence. Eventually, the tension would explode. In January 1897, a British expedition led by acting Consul General James Robert Phillips traveled toward Benin City. Phillips claimed that he wanted to meet the Oba, but the expedition entered Benin territory without the Oba's permission. Benin officials attempted to stop the group from proceeding. The situation became violent. Phillips and several members of the expedition were killed. The incident gave Britain a justification for military action. A punitive expedition was organized. This time, the British were not arriving as diplomats. They were coming with a military force. In February 1897, British forces advanced toward Benin City. They were better equipped with modern firearms and military technology. Benin's defenders fought back, but they faced a vastly different level of firepower. British forces eventually entered the city. The royal palace was looted, buildings were destroyed, and Benin City was devastated by fire. The kingdom's political independence was effectively broken, but something else happened inside the palace. British soldiers discovered thousands of extraordinary artworks. Bronze plaques, ivory carvings, royal sculptures, ceremonial objects, and objects documenting generations of Benin's history. These became known collectively as the Benin Bronzes, even though many were made from brass, ivory, wood, and other materials. The artworks were removed from Benin. Some were taken as official spoils of war. Others were later sold. Many eventually entered European museums, galleries, universities, and private collections. Objects that had once been kept in the royal palace of Benin were now scattered across the world. Some ended up in Britain. Others reached museums and collections in Germany, the United States, and elsewhere. For the people of Benin, however, these were not simply valuable works of art. They were connected to their ancestors, their royal dynasty, their history, and their identity. The removal of the objects, therefore, created a wound that would last for generations. To understand the controversy, you have to understand what these objects represented. Imagine a museum displaying portraits of your ancestors. Now, imagine that those portraits were taken during an invasion of your homeland. Then imagine seeing them displayed thousands of miles away while your own people had little or no control over them. That is part of the emotional and historical argument surrounding the Benin Bronzes. They are works of art, but they are also historical records. They reveal how Benin society was organized. They show the clothing, weapons, symbols, ceremonies, and personalities of the royal court. Some objects also preserve memories of relationships between Benin and other parts of the world. In other words, they tell the story of Benin through Benin's own artistic tradition. For decades, calls for the return of the objects grew. The debate became part of a much larger conversation about colonialism and cultural heritage. Who owns objects taken during colonial wars? Should museums keep them because they have preserved them for generations? Or should they return them because they were taken under circumstances that were fundamentally unjust? These questions have no simple answer, but the campaign for restitution became increasingly powerful. In recent years, several museums and governments have agreed to return some Benin objects. Some pieces have been physically returned to Nigeria. Others have been transferred or promised for return under different agreements. The process, however, remains complicated. There are still thousands of objects connected to Benin in collections around the world. Nigeria and the traditional Benin Royal Institution have continued efforts to bring Benin objects home. The return of even a single object can carry enormous symbolic meaning. Because the question isn't only, where should this artwork be displayed? It's also, who has the right to tell the story of the people who created it? Museums that once treated these objects primarily as examples of African art are increasingly being forced to confront the circumstances under which they were acquired. And for Benin, the conversation is about more than museums. It is about history, memory, identity, and the legacy of colonialism. More than a century after British troops entered Benin City, the consequences of that invasion are still visible. The magnificent works created by Benin's artists survived. The kingdom itself survived. Its people survived, and the story of Benin was not erased, but its treasures were scattered across the world. Today, some are coming home. Others remain in foreign collections, and the debate continues. Perhaps the most important question isn't simply who owns the Benin Bronzes. Perhaps it's this: when history is taken from a people, can returning the objects help return part of their story? Because the Benin Bronzes are not just metal. They are memories cast into history. And more than a century after they were taken, the world is still deciding where those memories belong.